The special meeting of the Board of Fire Commissioners, South King Fire and Rescue to order, for July 11th, 2023. All commissioners are present. I'd like to ask Commissioner Fuller to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge. Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Okay. Back on anybody, why don't we start with Mr. Fuller for comments?
It was a relatively quiet 4th of July around here, around our place, but looks like around the district, it's not quite. But I know we served. Sorry for the fires, but it's a busy night.
Well, I've done so privately, but I'd like to publicly thank Captain Mike Lawson and his crews for responding to my house 2 Wednesdays ago when I had a health incident, I'll call it. And was ultimately transported to the ER in St. Francis. They were patient, supportive, expert, and I really appreciate their assistance. I'm still here.
You, pleasure seeing you.
Well, I wasn't fortunate on July. I have a much greater appreciation for our veterans on D-Day, because that's what it felt like in my house. Shaking and rattling, and there was some booms. I didn't hear any hollering and screaming afterwards close by, so I figured they either blew themselves up or they were far enough away that you can get in the shrapnel. But it was nuts, totally nuts. That our guys, our members are out there doing their job and did a good job, and more power to them. Thanks.
Commissioner Virginia.
I also appreciate that nothing caught on fire in my neighborhood on 4th of July. That's great. Other than that, I don't have any comments.
Thank you. Yeah, it wasn't quite in our neighborhood, at least. People used to live across the street and used to shoot bottle rockets our way that they moved, so, that was a relief. All right, any public comments? Okay, hearing none, agenda item 5, strategic bridge plan progress reports.
Seth, you're on deck.
I'm on deck. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, commissioners. My name is Seth Rosenblum. I've been working with the chief and the district here to help implement the strategic plan that was adopted back in February. I'm going to loosely follow a set of slides that I think were provided earlier in maybe late last week, earlier this week.
Are you going to use the screen here? Do we need to move? Or?
I was not planning on that. I know that Summer made a hard copy for everyone. So if you've got those, you can use those to refer. Maybe I'll just kind of open and say that, as you know, I know this body adopted the strategic plan back in February. In March, the district, led by the chief, kicked off the implementation. The strategic plan lasts for 2 years. It's got work in 2 very important piles. First, really identifying the funding mechanism that's going to fund the district from 2025 and beyond. And the second, in really transforming the organization so that it can best serve the community and its employees. Implementation began in March by 20 objectives and an owner, someone accountable for implementing each one of those objectives. It's been established by the chief, and work's really begun underway to kick many of those off. And so today is the first update. I think we'll be doing these quarterly through the duration of the plan to give you an update of the work that's in progress and complete. You may recall from developing the plan, I'm looking at slide 4, those of you who have the deck. We had organized work groups to develop strategic objectives in 4 areas: funding, accountability, leadership, and internal communications. All of the objectives that were adopted in the plan have moved into implementation. When it came time to do the work, it was easier to organize them by still funding. It made sense to combine the objectives focused on accountability and leadership into a work group. It made sense to inaugurate a work group that's focused on planning. We had a lot of things in the strategic plan about creating a planning function, creating a project management capability, for example. And it really made sense to kind of group those together, to still stay true to the strategic intent, but to organize the people doing the work in a way that there was synergies, occurring together. And of course, internal communications. So going forward, when you see the strategic objectives, you'll see them worked by these 4 work groups. Fear not, they didn't lose their integrity from what was set in the plan. We go to slide 6. I just wanted to illustrate the way responsibilities are broken out organizationally for implementing the strategic plan. It was really important that this not be something that was shelfware once that was adopted. Usually the way you do that is you make people in charge of getting it done. So the chief assembled a steering committee. Many of those individuals are here. And then also who sits on the steering committee are sort of work group chairs that ultimately have accountability for the set of strategic objectives. I've been working with Mitchell Lee, Director of Enterprise Services, Summer Shirey here as sort of a project team to help keep people organized, keep us on track, bring the work groups together as they assemble and meet the objectives. We're sort of taking what we call a matrix approach to responsibility. This is a reference on slide 7. So for every objective, there's a person responsible. For every objective, there's somebody accountable. And then, of course, there's stakeholders throughout the district who are consulted and provide advice, expertise, and are also informed. And of course, work can be delegated. So some of these work group leads are bringing in others to get some of these things done. You go to slide 8. This kind of shows the areas of work, who's accountable, and then for each of the 20 objectives, the responsible civilian staff member or officer that's spearheading the implementation of that objective. And again, the language here at the objective level is right in the plan. I didn't list all of the detail scope for each of these defined in the plan. We've been managing the work at this level. Slide 9 is very similar to slide 8. Here it actually shows the status of the work underway. Where you see a target time frame, that was the time frame established in the plan itself that was adopted. Where you see the forecast, it's when the completion of that objective is anticipated. It's shaded in orange. If there's been a date change, it's pushed it out. And we'll talk about some of the timing and some of the sequence of the work. Where you see the status for each of these objectives, in work means it's begun. There are some things that haven't launched yet, and that's kind of by design. Some of these things have dependencies. You kind of need to get first things done first before you sequence the second. And we're, I think, pleased to say that there are certain objectives that have already been met by the time of this meeting. So there's been some progress. Well, there's progress away all across, but there's been some objectives that have been done. The way I'm going to then proceed is I'm going to kind of dive into each one of these work areas. We can discuss with more substance the objectives in flight, what's coming in the next 90 days, what's being completed, what's anticipated. That'd be helpful. I'm going to move first to funding, which is on slide 10. So the general critical path here.
Excuse me, Seth, slide
Yeah.
what?
Number 10. Yeah.
Is there anything in there that we should have a good understanding in the previous pages that as we move through the details? We skipped quite a few pages, so I just want to make sure We've got what we need to understand.
I believe you do. I will certainly field any questions. I guess I don't see any risks in terms of the way things are organized, but are there questions?
Let me ask Bill's question another way. On page 9, it shows all the objectives. Are any of these objectives substantively changed from the strategic plan that we adopted?
No, not one.
I think that was Bill's question is, are we really familiar with these, having adopted them, or was there any change that we should go through to understand?
Hold on a second.
Not in substance.
There's been no substantive change. I'd certainly flag that, if there was in accomplishing the work of them. There's not been. Not so far. Step forward.
We're on page 10. Bill, did that clarify it all?
Yes.
Now on page 10, is that where we are?
Yes. The funding work has a kind of linear path to it. The first is to assess, determine, and recommend a funding mechanism for the district that would go to the voters in 2024 and provide ample funding on into the future. And that work is underway now. It was slated for completion in Q2. It is not completed yet. The cause for the delay is not that there is an inherent obstacle in doing that work, but with lid lists that are going on the ballot, I believe, next month, it simply pushed out some of the timing. There's also a lot of data cleanup to do. Assessing and analyzing and looking seriously at a service benefit charge requires looking at a lot of county data that needs a lot of scrubbing. And so I know that the team has been needing to do that before they can really pencil out. I think the financial implications, both on the voters, but also on the district in migrating to that mechanism. And that's really where that work stands. I'm willing to give Joe a chance to speak if I haven't characterized it correctly.
We did when we set out the strategic bridge plan, a lid lift was not on our horizon. We made that shift this year. We have limited bandwidth. So simple explanation for pushing it out.
Joe, that last bullet on that page, additional consultant support. Can you describe just briefly what the substance of that consulting work might be related? I'm assuming that's related to a service benefit charge.
It is, it's actually, it could be twofold. One is a consultant to help guide us through that process of communicating to the community, educating the community on the need. The other part of that equation is actually getting somebody on board to help us with the benefit charge calculations, with the behind the scenes work that has to go on to support changing your funding mechanism in that way. So it could be two different consulting groups. It could be one, we haven't vetted that out yet, but we've identified that we may need some outside assistance.
The latter consulting effort you were talking, that you just mentioned, would that be to structure the service benefit charge? I'm not as familiar with it as probably some of my colleagues are.
Yeah, not to get into the weeds, Commissioner, but as you understand, it's a significant change in our revenue. And to support having that mechanism, there's billing, there's the formula, there's billing, there's a process for citizens to dispute the calculation, et cetera, et cetera. So it's all of the logistics behind the scenes to support that mechanism.
And the first consulting effort would be aimed towards a ballot measure that has to be approved by the voters. That would require a supermajority initially.
Yes, when this district attempted the benefit charge some years ago, we did hire a consulting group to guide us through it and actually help us educate the public. We just had significant opposition during that period and it faltered.
One last question, and I know you don't want to get into the weeds. Sure. I know this is so important to the district. Would that effort, would you contemplate that effort would actually allow anybody who potentially would have a service charge, residential or commercial, to be able to know what that charge would be.
Yes,
Would
part
the
of that,
database allow that to occur?
absolutely. And part of that process, the team has on their objective to develop a tool to post on a website so that citizens could actually understand what the implications of the benefit charge would be for them.
The measure itself before it's voted.
Yep.
Thank you.
I know that, looking out ahead, and I'll summarize this later, but I know looking out ahead, that work will be wrapping up shortly, the assessment piece of it. And then, that team, led by Joe, will be ready to present to this board, a recommendation, on the funding mechanism. And once that's identified, there's a lot of community relations work, that sort of stems from that, engaging with the public. And I know that we have, is Kathy Chamber? Yeah, here to, I think, share some of the community relations work that's been done. I thought we'd kind of go through the general presentation of where we're at in the strategic objectives and then make time for that, if that's okay. I'm going to move on to sort of the status of objectives related to accountability and leadership, if that's okay. And that's on slide 11, if you're following along in the reading material. Almost all of the objectives in this area are underway. The work is in flight, and again, by design. We do have one area that hasn't yet begun, and again, it's sort of by design, as some of the other subsequent work needs to be defined first. There is work right now underway defining leadership competencies and expectations, leadership aspects of all roles, and identifying training resources and training that may be available. This process of finding out where in the community, where I believe in fire training academies, additional leadership training opportunities are, could move to a budget ask. And you'll see where I flag as work in the strategic plan is underway and we anticipate that the design work anticipates needing funding. I'm just calling it out here so that if you see some of these things again, certainly in Q4, you'll know why. A piece of work that did get completed is there was a strategic objective identified in the plan to improve officer and crew oversight. Captain Chris Anderson did some work analyzing that, talking to crews, talking to battalion chiefs, and proposed some recommended changes, some of which just got adopted, I believe, in like the last 10 days. I don't know if Chief Volkenberg is here to speak to them.
He might be on. Open the call. He's excused.
Yeah, no, he's not online.
Yes, he's excused from that, but I can speak to it very briefly. I know that he has implemented some of the communication changes. I made that in my commissioner report in terms of the cadence of how he meets with his battalion chiefs. And he's increasing communication and helping determine the necessary oversight for his officers and crews, and encouraging his BCs to really get out there to have some face time with his officers. So, this is kind of off topic, but I'm doing an accident investigation, and one of the officers stated if there was more oversight from our officers and or battalion chiefs, like we used to have, this accident may have been prevented. And this really dovetails into what Chief Volkenberg is trying to achieve by improving that communication and opening those communication channels and setting that communication. So it's in play as we speak.
How is that going to be measured to track its continued?
It's really, Commissioner, it's really going to be a qualitative analysis. It's hard to quantify in terms of numerically on a scale. But what I would say is overall sentiment analysis in the future with all things related to the strategic bridge plan. Our hope is to get another organizational health assessment out so we can remeasure where we're at in terms of our progress. So that's the short answer to that.
Remind me what 50 deep means.
It has to do with the response model that we have within the zone. For mutual aid purposes. And it's a zone-wide deal that was triggered some time ago. But essentially, worst case scenario is if we have a large scale event, what's the 50th deep unit that could potentially be identified on a call? And it's much more than that. That's kind of skimming over the top, but that's what it is.
Probably 50 deep, we had 25 deep, and several summers ago when it got busy, with the CAD ran out of units to recommend, even though we knew there were still units out there, so that's when that doubled down.
What happens when you get to 50?
Well, I don't know that we ever have.
We have, yeah.
Or what do we do?
Well, if we got to 50 deep, then whoever is running the ultimate call or whoever is the zone coordinator at Valleycom, they're gonna anticipate prior to that arrival, they'll be, I would imagine they'll be watching it from the very start, but when they get up there where it could trip, they're ahead of it. So they can go to a multi-county response. There's plans in place, but the 50 deep is kind of just a daily operational protective measure. It's not like when we hit 50, we're on our own. There's plenty more that we can draw from.
Expanded mutual aid, I guess you could call it.
Task force.
A large body of work is to implement a district-wide evaluation process of all personnel. It's on track. It's on track to begin sort of the deployment, kicking off that process at the end of this year. I believe it's going to be implemented, I think, based on the hire date. So it'll be rolling. So the idea is that by the end of the strategic plan, anybody who's in the district, as of the end of this year would have gone through a cycle. And Nikki Ball's been leading that effort. She's developed evaluation criteria, I believe, for all firefighters. And I believe that that's gone to the E-Board for their review and input. She's finalizing that criteria for civilian staff. It's in progress and underway. And she's also, once the design is done, is looking at what will be sort of training model. Managers are going to have to be trained, right, in conducting this evaluation. So
Local E-Board. When you refer to E-Board, that's the local.
Yes.
Yeah.
The executive board.
and so you'll obviously hear more about this as this begins to be rolled out. Probably the next time we meet again to discuss the status of this, but that work is coming. And again, I'm just going to kind of highlight, where sort of the big objectives are being met and landed. We talked about probably some budget requests that may come through as that training matrix is seen.
Question on slide 11, I guess item 8. Battalion chiefs rounding schedule to be done July 1st. What is that?
Chief Volkenberg is not here. I'll give a stab at it. Do you want to take it?
Yeah, that was a proposed date of which Chief M. Volkenberg was going to change his scheduling to meet more frequently with this battalion chief. So it is my understanding that that has been done. But again, Chief M. Volkenberg is not here to speak to that, so I don't know the intricacies, but I understand that it's underway.
Okay. Is that like making the rounds?
Yeah,
The word rounding is making.
yes.
Rounding up or down?
I'm going to move to the planning objectives instead, unless there's no more questions on accountability leadership. I'm referring to slide 12. A lot of work underway in this area, and I've got Chief Crossen right behind me who can speak to some of the details. One of the big pieces is there's a strategic objective to define and formalize a planning function. And as I understand it, the ink is almost dry define that process with a goal of beginning to deploy it in time for the budget cycle that would be beginning here shortly in September. And there's some key elements to this planning process, and it's to create greater transparency around priority, around what actually gets funded, what doesn't and why. With explanations back to the parties as to, what can't fund everything, what choices are made out there.
In the simplest of form, the first thing we wanted to do was we wanted to come up with a process that could work for everything, small, medium, and large. We didn't want to take something small and easy and make it go through this big complicated process. So the first thing the team, and the way Captain Mertlich's been leading it, is kind of with what the small, medium, and large looks like, right? Understanding that large probably has budget impacts and maybe staffing impacts, and those have to go through an entire process. But, so that was the first step. So that is penciled out. In fact, I'm scheduling a meeting with, Captain Mertlich to go over that and make those details. But then what was the second part we talked about? I just lost my train of thought. What was the second piece of, just talked about?
Process, small, medium, large, and then rolling it out in time for budget.
Right. And then the other thing, so the other thing we want to do is we wanted to get this out, for this budgetary process. One of the challenges, and one of what you heard from people who submit things, is that things are submitted, they go through a process, the process decides what we're gonna do or not do, but then they kind of fall off a cliff. And you either know that it got funded or it didn't, but there's no really always follow-up on why it did. A lot of times, it didn't get funded because we ran out of money, right? It's just a simple, no one's disputing it's not a good idea. It's not at that point on the priority list. So one of the things we want to add to too is to explain to people after the process is done, when something doesn't get funded, explain why it didn't get funded. And then if something is deemed as something that's worthwhile and worthy, then we have it stay on a list so it's there. So we don't have to keep reinventing the wheel every year and bring it back around. If the committee or the group has decided that this is worthy of consideration, it just didn't work in this year's budget, then it lives in a living document. And that way, if during the year, a small amount of money or something becomes available, then there's not like, okay, well, what are we gonna do with this money? There is a priority list in place. And really what we're hearing from our members is they really appreciate that transparency, right? Sometimes there's just ideas that's just not in the the priority of the organization. But sometimes, no, that's a great thing. It's just the money just didn't work. So that's really what that project comes out to.
Another project that's highlighted here that's underway. One of the areas that was noted in the organizational health survey was inefficiencies or challenges experienced by employees in trying to navigate some of the resources that were available to them. So there was a strategic objective to streamline access to that. And Matt Reinhardt is designing a one-stop shop employee resource center. Think of it as a portal available online, follows best practices I think other districts have built. And I believe that the design work for that is close to in place, looking at maybe some resource needs to go ahead and implement that. Initially, we didn't know what the costs to do that were, and I believe they are finalizing that now. The date for implementation might push to Q1 of next year, just because there may be budget need to get some help in SharePoint to sort of code that, roll it out and build it. But it's coming and it's on its way. Any more comments on that one?
This one lists the manager, Jennifer's role. Don, if you have anything.
Well, it ties in with a bunch of other IT projects. We are moving the entire department to Office 365, and that will push us into SharePoint in the cloud. So SharePoint will be available to everyone, including all of you, from any place, anywhere. So we want to build it in that environment, and that environment is probably 60 days out, 45 to 60 days out.
We've already cut people over our test group, and they're already testing everything out. So once we have the kinks worked out, we'll start batching people in groups. So it will be more controlled. So we can catch problems. I don't want to push a big change out to the whole organization and then have to troubleshoot for every single one of you. But probably 60 days and everyone should be up, working and functional on 365. The SharePoint section, obviously we'll need to build out to make sure that it's robust and ready, but that framework will be in place.
Chief Crossan, I see that Captain Ritter is the lead on implementing and deploying transparent and objective promotion practices. What's the likely work product going to be?
Well, we just actually talked about this in staff this morning. We kind of have an agreement in place. We're gonna do some testing with the rest of the zone on how they do some of their promotionals. I believe the biggest conversation related to this topic is, I think there are people who believe they want to be promotionals are predictable. It's not surprise. It's not, I mean, we kind of know what we're walking into and what we're getting into. They also want to be transparent. So one of the things that we talked about today during staff, Chief Van Volkberg talked about, was we kind of have an agreement for our next lieutenants and driver engineer to do a process along with our partners around the zone. So we're all sharing together, we're all using resources together. The other thing is that we would take what some would deem as, insider information and so forth, because we're all doing it as a group. The evaluators will be from all over the zone and so forth. The only process where we will make sure that we have one of our evaluators in the room is the personal experience profile. And that's really kind of a check person to make sure that someone's being honest with who they are and what they've done. But everything else will be part of a bigger system. So we'll be able to take resources from other departments and we'll work with each other. So that's the plan that we just talked about this morning that we're doing with those two processes. So that lines up with this. And it was Captain Winter was in our staff meeting this morning and was talking to directly about the work that Chief Van Volkenberg and him have agreed to do this with that. But that's really what this objective is about.
So it's more process,
It's more process.
so there really won't be a defined work product. It's just, will there be a guidebook? I mean, so if somebody wants to promote,
Right.
would there be something that they would read ahead of time?
There are things always, we always put material out. Like, let's just take the written test, for example. We put out what materials covered on the written test. So it's not a surprise, this manual and these items are all fair game in the written test. As far as the promotionals go, one of the things that the zone does, like before the promotional exam or before the tactical exam, they have a in-person come in and they do a presentation and they show this is what the tactical exam will look like. It's not the exact scenario, but they pay out so everybody knows exactly what they're walking into. The goal of the exams, right, is to learn about the person. It's not to surprise them. It's not to say, yeah. It's not to play games with them. It's to go, you're coming to a tactical. It's going to look like this. This is the type of things you'll be asked to do and so forth. But then you won't know until that day you walk in what the actual scenario is. So it's no different than really our real life instance, right? We train our people on fires and do stuff and so forth. They know all the rules, they know the steps, they know that. They just don't know what building's burning tomorrow, right? So that's kind of what this promotional is. There have been people at times that believe that processes will change. And this time a process had this type of scenario, and this time it was this. And so we're trying to make it very standard and very consistent, not only in our department, but throughout our zone.
In addition to that exam, what are the other things evaluated before the function?
We usually have a tactical, we have a personal experience profile, it's about yourself. We usually have a personnel problem of some type. And then in the past, we've had a project or there's something they've been given to do a presentation on. So, and if we're gonna change any of those things, there's a negotiation aspect of that. So yeah. And the good news, like I said, not only is our department looking at this, so it's everybody else. So it's something that is kind of that bigger picture.
Flagging, finally, in this area of planning, there will probably be some budget requests for planning capabilities. And then also, as I mentioned earlier, on the build, this one-stop shop SharePoint, this employee resource center to get that. Last area of work, internal communications. Work underway to standardize, streamline, really key critical messages. They go, this is internally, within the district. It's focusing on chief messages, battalion chief highlights, and the staff and administration reports that go out. Formalizing the look, the feel, normalizing the content for those. A little bit of this work is on track. It's been a little affected by some PTO. That work is on track, and actually one of the key messages that's being worked on has been implemented by Battalion Chief Joel Barrett, and that is inaugurating a battalion chief highlights that have been going out. And he's deployed that, and now I believe it goes out to every company from every battalion chief. And I guess there was been a period of time where that's not been occurring. So that got rolled out, I think it was about 6 weeks ago. And from what my last conversation with that work group from Chief Barrett, that's been well received. And it's again really the goal of increasing communications, especially kind of up and down the chain. And this is one example of sort of improving that internal communications. That's a deliverable. It's now been formalized and rolled out.
Another example of that would be the commissioner reports. They're now available for everybody to see. There's just a variety of changes taking place to, make information more accessible for everybody.
Will we see these VC reports?
I don't know why not. I'm sure we can. If they're going out, there's no reason you can't see them.
Yeah, good, everybody.
They only go to ops.
I'm assuming.
Well, if they're out in the ops world, then commissioners should be able to read them too. Okay. Yeah, we'll work on a access point for you.
Has there been any pushback on how much time it's taking to do the monthly report?
Not that I'm aware of.
It's from reporting experience in the past that department managers and section managers actually had to write this monthly report. And I think here, when you say do it, there's a little bit more authority to it.
Yeah,
I'll be honest, I think that most of us have taken the tack. It's a great time to look back over last month. I have it on my calendar. It's a time to write my report. I have a note in my notepad, I was right where things I'm going to talk about, but it's a great time for us to reflect and look back. What is working, what isn't working, what all maybe has gotten dropped. So I think most of us taking that tack to it. This is just an opportunity before we communicate with you guys is, okay, what have we done there? And what things do we need to address? So I don't think anybody's taking a bad look at it at all.
The content is excellent, having it go deeper into who's making the reports, not just the accountable person covering and then distributing it. I think that's an amazing tool that we can use.
Commissioner, to jump on what you're saying, the question that you asked, in particular, my teams are logistics, fleet facilities, trades, they're very busy, as you know. There are times where it becomes challenging for them to write these reports, unquestionably. But with that being said, they have visibility and direct line of communication with the commissioners. And so they're able to tell their story. So that offsets some of the burden. But there are times where I have to excuse my supervisors because they are just simply too swamped. But with that being said, I think everybody embraces being able to communicate with you.
Good. And I think you can expect some degree of variety every time they come out. In so much as it may not have the same people reporting, but that's okay. As Mitch said, there's a kind of a time balance there too, to be factored into that, but I think the content is, I haven't heard anything from you, otherwise we would shift, but it is. Okay.
I think it's a great opportunity for the supervisors to provide recognition for work well done by their crews or their platoon or their shift or whatever.
Absolutely.
And we haven't had that in the past.
And we have not, and I know that my supervisors certainly appreciate that opportunity, but feel that, speak to you, speak to that, so, thank you.
You know, in the area of internal communications, that work group's not alerted me to any pending budget requests to complete out the objectives underway. An area that is discussed in that work group, it's not in scope, that adopted strategic plan is the recent rebranding of the district. And I know it's something that I think I've heard would like to be flagged for 2025, for strategic plan later down the road. Just there'd be a lot of work to formalize signage, formalize look and feel, change the name. There's real work to roll that out. Not in scope, but it's on the radar. Final slide, kind of what's ahead, what's coming up next 90 days. It's the intent, I know, to communicate out of progress on the strategic plan, probably provide a dashboard of progress similar to what's shown here, to do that this month. Work continues at the work group level and across individuals, which is being tracked. I'd say marquee efforts that will be wrapping up here shortly will be a recommendation on a funding mechanism to go to the voters in 2024, which will be brought before this group. That will also require some decisions just around some staffing support, especially in community affairs. Once you've decided that you're going to say, if you formalize the service benefit charge, you're going to put the gas down on that community affairs effort. It's going to create more work. So there'll be people power needed to do that. There will be budget requests, as I flagged here earlier, by some of the objectives that I'm sure this group will be hearing about. And then the steering committee meets every 2 months. This is just sort of ongoing care and feeding of implementing the strategic plan that occurs in August and October. And then we'll come back to this group with sort of an updated report. And if this format is effective for you, I'll continue to use it or take any guidance on what would be a more effective ways to track progress overall.
If I could ask you to back up to the last page, something I just saw on the communications thing. The last bullet point, what is the district rebranding?
We changed our name. We dropped and rescue, and it's not just that. We're with Ken and Mitch driving it. We're beginning to remark rates in a different way. For example, the new heavy rescue will be here. It's a different color than we've had in the past. So it's signage on the buildings. We're going with a much nicer look sign than what we have currently. It's kind of all inclusive. Ultimately, it'll come down to a patch change. You name it. If it says South King Fire, it's going to be looked at and potentially changed.
Does that include the logo?
Yeah,
Letterhead, logo.
yeah, all of it.
Did the council approve our name change?
Haven't heard yet. It's in their system for approval, but it's the county, so.
You're a good buddy with Pete, why don't you ask him what it is?
In mind, breaking.
Very good. Good update.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions or?
I agree with you, Chairman. This is really excellent work. This all has to be layered on top of what everybody does every day. And we recognize that this means additional effort on a lot of people's parts. Seems very well organized, and I'm pleased personally, I'm sure the other board members, the fact that it's being implemented is a compliment. Thank you for the report. All of it.
I think one of the contributing factors is the fact that we did the the assessment survey. That gave us the basis, the foundation, and what the issues are, and that's the guiding principle of going forward. And everybody's invested in that, and that's great. And we got momentum. We just need to keep it going.
If I could just make a couple of comments real briefly. Seth is very good at what he does. And he's corralling people and kind of drawing out of them the information that's needed. So I appreciate what Seth has done. And we've said it before, but without Summer and the work that she has done, and she's one of those that won't take much credit, but I give her 100% of the credit, because the stuff that she is doing that you don't see and many people don't see is very real. So way to go. Thank you.
I would also like to echo that. I do appreciate Summer. She's working very hard on the strategic bridge plan, even down to hunting us down the hallway. And literally, she would come upstairs. She's like, you got to get in this meeting right now, pulling me out of the chief's meeting or whatever it is. So she's keeping us focused and on track. She's working collaboratively with Seth. So I'm very grateful as well. Thank you, Summer.
So we have to look over our shoulder every once in a while and see if she's chasing us down.
Could very well be the case, yeah.
Yeah.
You pull together our leadership names across the organization. It looks like a very competent bunch of people in fact working in each of these areas. Yeah, we've got, I think some very talented people in the department, and they show here in the involvement with this. I'd like to thank the local and the E-board for their participation in this. It's important to have them involved in it. So as it just so happens, President's here, so thank you. And away we go.
Yeah, I know, we also wanted to include in this portion of your agenda, we want to show some of the progress of the work, not just sort of talk about it in spreadsheet form, it's completed or in work. And so, and Captain Cheney's going to share some of the work that's begun in the community outreach. And of course, it's a slow roll, and it's really important because by next year, you know, the community is going to have a ballot initiative. So if I could turn the floor over.
We need to look
We're
at,
gonna try to present it back
we
here.
need to look at the screen.
Yeah. I think kind of Gene's gonna try to present it back there, so we'll see if we can turn lights off. Yeah.
Yeah. We're gonna have to move out. We'll see it.
Building plans working? Yeah. Bring this a little closer.
Okay, so this is going to be a little different. You're obviously our commissioners. You understand the fire district pretty well, but this is a presentation that we have drafted and put together to give to our community members. And the way that I approach it when I go and I give these presentations is I just kind of apologize up front and say, hey, you know, it's been a few years because of COVID that we've been able to do these presentations one-on-one and in person. And so really, I want to give you a high level view of your fire district, who we are, what we do on a regular basis, and of course, the people that work for us. It is a little long, so it's going to be about 35, 40 minutes. So you might want to have a seat just in case. I don't want you to get too tired and pass out, but I'm going to talk to you as if you don't know anything about the district. So I hope you can bear with me on that. So welcome to South King Fire and Rescue. I don't know why our internet's going slow. Yeah. Having some internet issues there. Sorry, so welcome to South King Fire. We are your local fire district. We provide emergency services across the board through the cities of Des Moines, Federal Way, and parts of unincorporated King County. When you think about it, think about basically we cover from Fife and Tacoma all the way up to Normandy Park. And then from the Puget Sound all the way over to what we kind of call the ridge before you drop down into the valley, down into Auburn there. With that, that really gives us 41 square miles. We protect a little over 160,000 community members. And we ran just over 24,000 calls last year for 2022. Do we know when the internet is going so slow? Okay, because that was a video. Okay. All right, so within South King Fire, we have 157 firefighters. They are supported by 36 day staff personnel. That's everybody from finance, HR, and IT. We have 7 responding fire stations. We have a logistics and fleet center and 1 training station. So when you think about the fire stations, that's where the firefighters live and that's where they work. That's where they respond out of. Our logistics and fleet center, that's a new building for us. It's 2 separate buildings on the same property, and we'll talk about those in a little bit. But that allowed us to really kind of increase the work that we're doing inside and maintain control of the work that we provide. And then our training station, which is where you're located right now, Station 68. It's actually a regional asset. I don't know if you're aware, but everybody south of Seattle in King County is what we call Zone 3. And everybody in Zone 3, all the fire departments in Zone 3 now work collaboratively through the training consortium. And the training consortium basically brings the best of the best and the brightest of the brightest to come together and really develop the training that the firefighters are going through. What's really nice about it is that there's some things you can do here at this station that you can't do at a different training station. And so sometimes you'll see different fire departments here, like Puget Sound Fire might be here. You'll see somebody from up north. So you might see a lot of different rigs, but that's the whole purpose of the regional asset there. It really streamlines everything so that we're all on the same page and working collaboratively. When you think about firefighting, you think about 24-hour shifts, the firefighters who live at the station. They do work 24 hours, and our new staffing model that we're trying to achieve on a daily basis is 29. That can give us a variety of different apparatus that's based off of qualifications on whether or not somebody's qualified to drive an engine or if they're qualified to drive a ladder. There's different variations of it, but essentially you could have there's always 1 battalion chief who's in charge for the 24-hour shift. They oversee all 7 of those stations and all the major emergency calls. They oversee training, making sure all the paperwork's getting done. We can have 4 aid cars. Aid cars are they're as a buffer to kind of help protect the fire engines because a lot of the calls that we run are actually EMS based, and we'll get into what those are here in just a little bit. But we also have 6 engines. And then, of course, we have 1 ladder truck. And the ladder truck, that's the big truck that's got the huge ladder on top. It can reach out to 105 feet. We don't have a lot of high rises here, but we do have a significant number of mid rises. And so this helps us be able to attack any emergencies that we have in those mid rise buildings. One of the things that most people don't know is that we actually have a fire prevention division. It is located in City Hall here in Federal Way, and that is actually overseen by a division chief of prevention, also a fire marshal, an assistant fire marshal, and we have 2 deputy fire marshals, 3 fire and life safety inspectors, a plans examiner, and an administrative assistant. Now, what this should mean to you is that we are actually integrated with the cities, not just Federal Way, but also in Des Moines. We're integrated with their building and their planning divisions. And we work collaboratively to make sure that all of our commercial occupancies and apartment complexes, that they're up to code and that the codes are being followed, that the emergency exit ways are actually opened for you, that the sprinkler systems are working and they're being checked as they're supposed to. And so this really provides you the safety and the comfort for you to be able to go out into our community and enjoy yourself knowing that you're in a safe environment because we've already done the work from the beginning. So our plans examiner reviews plans from the ground up, and we always go back and we check every single building once every year. Sometimes we'll have to go out more and offer new permits, but that's the essential portion of the prevention division. Our fleet division, like I mentioned earlier, this is new for us. When you look at this fire engine, that thing is huge. Fire engines back in the day did not used to be that big. And so we were actually here at Station 68 for a really long time, but if eventually the fire trucks got so big, they couldn't even work on them here in the building. They'd be working out in the snow in the middle of winter, turning wrenches on our fire engines, just trying to help keep them up to, keep them safe so that they could respond. So they worked really hard to get this new location, and it's down across from Costco, down on Federal Way. You see, I don't know, familiar with that cement quarry that's basically right across the street from Costco? It's basically 352nd and Pack Highway. And so there's two buildings there. This is the fleet division. It now allows us to do all of our own mechanic work and keeps things in-house. So we're no longer having to rely on outsourcing. So that's a huge bonus for us. And that's overseen by a fleet supervisor along with 3 fleet mechanics. Our logistics division is another portion of that same property. When you think about logistics, that's everything that makes this fire department run. We essentially have 200 people here, and it's running emergency services 24/7, 365. So there's a lot of things that need to be on the constant move to make sure that everything is stocked and ready to go. And so we've got everything housed here in our logistics division. We have a logistics officer, and we just hired a brand new logistics clerk to help with that. And they make sure everything is up to snuff and running. They test equipment. They house our water supply. But really the biggest thing for this is all of our EMS supplies. So when you think back over the last few years in COVID-19, every call that we were running, we had to wear masks, we had to wear gowns, we had to wear gloves. That's a lot of product that we have to use on every single call when you're running 24,000 calls. The nice benefit about this was it also was a regional asset in the sense that when FEMA started sending stuff in, we were able to house some of that equipment here and then help divvy it up to share with our local community partners and neighboring districts. So let's talk about our call volume. 24,429 is what we said for 2022. It's broken out into a few different categories. It's just a little bit more high level. When you think about EMS calls, EMS, again, that's a major portion of what we do. That's 77% of the calls that we run. And that is a wide range of emergency calls. That's everything from lacerations to COVID-19, people who suffer cardiac arrest, doing CPR, and even scenes of violence. Most people aren't aware, but when there's a scene of violence and there's a shooting or stabbing, yes, law enforcement shows up first, but your fire department also has bulletproof vests and other safety equipment that we wear, and then we respond into that scene of violence to help treat those patients as quickly as possible.
It's traffic accidents.
In traffic accidents, vehicle accidents, there's a wide range of different things that we do with that. The good intent and false alarm, it looks like a really large number, but I kind of want to explain that just a little bit. So false alarm is when there's like a smoke alarm or a fire alarm that gets activated and then there's no fire. I don't know about you, but I burned popcorn more than once in my microwave. I'm a little embarrassed to say it, but that will set off your smoke alarm. So we would still respond, and then we get there and we find out, hey, there's actually no fire, so everything's okay. We can go back to quarters and respond to the next incident. Good intent calls. Sometimes somebody sees something, they're concerned about it, so they call it in, and then we're en route and we get there, maybe there's nothing there, or somebody calls and says, hey, so-and-so fell over, they're passed out, and next thing you know, they're able to wake them up and they actually don't need any medical help. We were already in the route. We were already on our way there, but we got canceled. And so then we came back. We're always trying to find strategic ways to help communicate with our community members to educate them on when to call 911. So hopefully we can reduce some of those in the future. And then fire, we are a fire department, 3%. It doesn't sound like a lot. 3% does not sound like a lot, but what it equated to was 136 building fires in 2022. That is a lot. When you think about that, that's almost one every 3 days, right? The largest one that we had in 2022 was a 3-alarm fire. It was up off of 21st Avenue Southwest and 356. And it was 36 units total that were destroyed in that one building. Thankfully, we were able to contain it to one building. We were able to rescue an occupant off the 3rd floor. And of course, we do care about people's pets. We know that they're part of your family, so we do save pets as well. And the interesting thing about this fire is how fast it went. So what happened was it was a middle apartment. It was on the 2nd floor. There was an electrical bar underneath the bed. It was all plugged in, lots of things plugged into it. It was covered with dust. They had clothes piled on top of it. It overheated. It ended up catching fire, caught the clothes on fire, caught the bed on fire, then caught the room on fire, which then broke the window. It starts to go out and extends up to the 3rd floor, heats up that window, breaks it, extends inside to the 3rd floor, continues to get bigger, and then it hits the eaves. And we all know where the eaves lead to. That leads to your attic space. So once it gets into the attic space, it ran right across the entire roof and burned it off really fast. This was a late August day, so it had been dry for a long time, and that wood hasn't been exposed to water for 30 years. So it's super dry, goes really, really quick, but thankfully nobody was injured and we were able to save it to just that one building. We do have the video of us actually rescuing that lady off of the 3rd floor. We got some assistance with crews from Tacoma, but we were able to, she woke up, she was asleep, and then could hear the racket and the noise and everything going above her. And she was able to quickly get out while we were still pulling hand lines and getting everything set up on the other side. So then we had some ladders there and we were able to throw those up and get her extricated really quickly. And then of course on the left, everybody cares about dogs. That was a dog that was stuck in the fire. We were able to get it out. It was covered in some soot, so we washed it off with a little bit of water, and we're even hooking up one of our oxygen masks that we have for pets. So yes, we actually do have oxygen masks for pets, and we can do CPR on a dog if needed. When you think about firefighting, most people just think firefighting and they're not even aware that we do EMS. There's a whole other conglomerate of different teams that we have that are really highly specialized individuals. And I want to highlight some of those teams here for you. This is our technical rescue team. These individuals are really highly trained in confined space, structural collapse, rope rescue, trench rescue, and swift water rescue. So when you think about confined space, there's a lot of construction around. There's a lot of tunnels that are underground, places where people might need to do a little bit of work, but it's not designed for you to be actually occupying it. Things happen. Somebody can get sick, maybe there's not enough oxygen down there. Who knows? But these people are able to get access in there, set up rigging systems to be able to pull people out safely, hook them up to harnesses, provide them some oxygen, whatever the case may be. Structural collapse, walls fall over, they're able to stabilize those, they're able to help calculate the weight of a wall and make sure that it's stabilized so they can move it if they need to. Rope rescue, those are the guys that are hanging off the side of the building in the harness with the ropes and they're able to pluck somebody out of a window. What's beautiful about South King Fire and of course the Pacific Northwest, there's a lot of cliffs and a lot of hills. And not too long ago, we had an elderly gentleman who was just dumping some grass clippings. He was dumping them over the side of his hill and he tumbled down the ravine. And it actually got banged up pretty good and it was pretty far down. So the rescue team comes in, they set up their rigging systems and they lower themselves down with the rope. They're able to treat the patient, they hook him into a harness, and then they hoist him back up using some pulley systems. It's really incredible. The trench rescue portion of that, that's what you see here in this picture. This is actually a trench rescue from last year in Renton. And what you see here is you see the excavator in the background. They were doing construction, had this huge trench that they had dug. They had safety equipment in there, but they pulled it out. And then the person went back down inside to go hook up the gas line. And of course, when he went back down to hook up the gas line, the walls collapsed and ultimately killed him. Okay, we still have a responsibility to take care of that individual. This is also a family-run business. So the family is there worried about their loved one that they just lost. Their hearts are breaking, so of course we have to do something. So the rescue team, what they do is they leave the excavator there. We don't want to turn it back on, make the problem worse, right? And shakes the ground. And then they start to bridge these trenches. As you can see with the ladders and the wood that they're using, And then they have these big, huge planks of wood that they lower down on the sides. And as they lower those down, they lower struts, those big metal pieces that you see that go straight across there. Those are hydraulic struts. And so then they pump those up and they extend them out to push the wood up against the walls of the trench so that it doesn't collapse on them. And I can't remember how many I counted. I think in this picture alone, there was 12 different struts that were being used in order to stabilize those walls so that we could then lower people in 19 feet deep to get to the dirt to uncover the patient. As they uncover the patient, this truck that you see on the right-hand side that's got that big hose, it's called a vac truck. They dig the dirt off of the patient and the vacuum truck sucks the dirt up and out of the way so it doesn't come back onto the patient or trap our firefighters. And then eventually they're able to get enough dirt away that they bring in their ladder truck. They put the ladder truck basically in the same spot. They have the aerial going all the way over it, and they set up a rigging system to lower somebody inside, grab the patient, put them in a harness, and then hoist them back up so that the family can have a proper goodbye. That individual right there as well, Mr. Driver Engineer McKinney, he's kind of considered the godfather of trench. He helped create this whole type of rescue system for that. So very proud to have him with our department. We have a Marine team. We talked about the area that we cover, which is part of the Puget Sound. We have 12 miles of coastline, and we can help protect from Tacoma all the way up to Seattle. We partnered with the state and said, hey, we believe this is a regional asset for you. We protect your shipping ways. We protect your precious waterways. We need some help so that we can have sufficient equipment to help provide that protection. And they granted us $750,000 to help purchase a new Marine vessel. This is Fireboat Zenith. It went into service last year, and it's already been really active, as you can see here. These individuals are highly trained in navigation, search and rescue, vessel assist, fire suppression, and operating in really close quarters. So when you think about like in a marina or up against a rock jetty, they're able to maneuver really efficiently there to provide emergency services for whatever's needed. The picture that you see here is from not too long ago. It's the ship fire that happened in Tacoma. Everybody remembers that. Toxic smoke, it was bothering everybody. What happens is the fire was happening up inside the ship, but you can't put too much water in the ship because then it'll start to list. And when it lists too far, then it'll start to sink, and it just filled up with diesel fuel. So thousands and thousands of gallons of diesel fuel would have then spilled into our Puget Sound. So of course we have an opportunity to help protect that. We went down, I think at least 4 days, if not more. We went down to help provide services. And what we're doing here is we're spraying water on the side of the vessel. The vessel has a lot of welds on there, and we want to make sure that those welds are staying cold so that they don't overheat and pop. If they overheat and pop and crack, that's when water starts to come in and ultimately it'll sink the ship. So the goal is to let the fire inside burn out, keep it cool on the outside, and then once the fire is burnt out, they can actually rebuild the vessel from the inside out. Pretty fascinating. This is our hazardous materials team. I was a hazmat technician for a while. I really, really enjoyed it. These are the individuals that put on the full encapsulating suit. They have their SCBA underneath as well. And they will walk through a toxic cloud of smoke to go turn off a valve or stop a leak for you. They're really, really good at biological and chemical radiation response. They've got high capabilities in air monitoring. That's, if something crashes on I-5 and it's giving off a toxic gas, we can monitor the air and see where the perimeters are, or if we need to evacuate downstream. They're really good at plugging and patching. So that's if we have some sort of a leak. Technical and mass decon. Technical decon is if you got some product on you as an individual, they have the ability to help remove that and treat you as an individual patient. But then mass decon is if we were all exposed to something, they have the ability to set up huge tents and run a couple hundred people through there and get you decontaminated in a really quick fashion. They also have advanced decon of virus and bacteria. talk about COVID-19 again. One of the things that we did really, really well was we helped the law enforcement agencies. We set up a decontamination trailer at our hazardous materials station. And we also had some special equipment with an atomizer that when a law enforcement officer picked somebody up and was exposed to COVID-19, they could go drop them off where they needed to at the holding cell. And then they would be able to come to our station. They could take a shower, they can get decontaminated themselves. And then while they were doing that, our hazardous materials team would decontaminate their vehicle for them so that they would be ready to go back to work. A new thing for us is we're developing a drone program with infrared capabilities. I don't know how much you know about chemicals, but some of them do not react nicely to each other. They can get really, really violent, okay? And we are also the first hazardous materials team to respond down into the valley where the train stations are. So you think about all the product that comes up and down I-5 across 18 and through the trains, we're bound to have something. And if those chemicals start to react, they either get endothermic or exothermic. And so that's when they're getting really, really cold or they're starting to get really, really hot and something dangerous is going to happen. With our drone program, we'll be able to spot that from miles away and be able to react a lot faster and help mitigate that. Rescue Swimmer program, that's one of our newer programs for us, and it is wildly successful. The Rescue Swimmers is really all about being progressive. We were the first department here in the zone, and I believe in King County, to bring rescue swimming to our community. What this is all about rapid entry into the bodies of water that we serve and protect. They're really highly trained at search and rescue. They're capable of doing dive patterns. They free dive, so they don't have a tank. And they've got a new inflatable rescue boat that's actually able to be inflated by one of our SCBA bottles, the ones that we wear on our back. We can use 2 of those and inflate it so we can get it up and running in a pretty quick fashion. And altogether, we have 38 swimmers. 38 swimmers are dispersed throughout the entire district. And the reason for that is they're on different shifts in different stations, because when they respond to a drowning or a water emergency, the likelihood of you having a rescue swimmer on that first vehicle that shows up is really high. And so there's actually an amazing story. There was unfortunately a 19-year-old girl who had reached the end of her ropes. She didn't think she had any other options, and she drove her vehicle into the Puget Sound. It was really tragic, but the first apparatus that showed up actually had a rescue swimmer on there. And the rescue swimmer was dressed up, ready to go, and starts swimming out there. What happens with the vehicle is the vehicle splashes into the water and it starts to float away from the shore. Starts to fill up with water inside the engine space, and as it does, it starts to tilt nose down and then continues to go underwater and drift away even further. The rescue swimmer gets all the way out to the boat, or all the way out to the vehicle, and is able to see the headlights under the water. As he's swimming out, another rescue swimmer showed up on the next vehicle, and that rescue swimmer starts swimming out there. So the first one finds the vehicle, swims down, and is able to identify that he has one patient in the driver's seat. Comes back up, second rescue swimmer meets him. They have a quick talk face to face, says, "Hey, I've got one, driver's side, okay, window." They got to go down, break the window, cut the seatbelt, yard the patient out, and then swim her back to shore. They swim her all the way back to shore, where they're met with more firefighters, King County Medic 1, which is a separate system, and of course, law enforcement's helping keep control of the scene. We we start CPR, hand her off to King County Medic 1, and we send a couple firefighters to continue the CPR efforts and transport the patient to Harborview, where ultimately she was resuscitated. It took a while, but about a year later, she actually came back to this station to come say thank you. And we awarded those 2 firefighters the Medal of Valor. It's one of the best awards that you can get. This is a slide about community affairs. I don't like putting a slide of myself in there. I think it's a little goofy, but I want you to know that we do care about our community and we are engaged in a lot of different fashions. Our number one responsibility is to respond to your emergency, for sure. But we also need to be integrated in our community and understand some of the needs that are there. And so we do that by community affairs. This is bridging the gap between the fire department, emergency services, and our community. We do lots of different school events, as you can see in the upper left there. We'll read to students, we'll participate in school fairs. We always take Pete, the fire engine. Pete is, he's a retired fire engine. He served the community about 27 years, and it stands for Public Education Training Engine. And it's kid-friendly, and it's designed so one of the fire engines out of service to respond to your emergency. So it's a good use of one of our resources. Every year we go up to Harborview Burn Unit. We provide presents for the patients and the doctors and the nurses that work there. And of course, you got to take Santa with you. So that's always a big hit. During COVID, we found out, hey, nobody's coming to us right now. So where are they at? Everybody was back at home. So we decided, let's go to where they are. So we created the Santa Parades. We partnered with both cities, so it's a Santa Parade and a canned food drive. We drive through the neighborhoods, we take pictures, and we collect a bunch of canned food, and then we split it between the city of Des Moines and the city of Federal Way for their food shelters. The one in the middle on the bottom, that's part of our smoke alarm program. Right now, we're working on new partnerships to get more smoke alarms. But essentially what happened with that is there was a 2-alarm fire at Camelot Square where 3 mobile homes burnt down, and we decided to go back and say, hey, let's see if everybody else has working smoke alarms. So we go back and we canvass the entire neighborhood, and we ended up installing 172 smoke alarms just through that one event. So that was wildly successful. And then the one in the lower right, that's just a garden camp. Kids are learning about gardening, and so of course we got to support that. Let's talk about our calls. We talked about in 2022, we ran a total of 24,429 calls. We actually ran a report for over the last 10 years from 2012 to 2022. And in 2012, we ran just about almost 16,000 calls. And then now in 2022, we're running 24,000 calls. That's an increase of 50% in a 10-year period. That is astronomical. Our firefighter staffing increase during that same 10-year period was 2. 50% increase in call volume, and we've only added, at that time, 2 more firefighters for our daily resourcing. It's not sustainable. When we think about economic development, we know the plans that the city of Des Moines has. We know the plans that the city of Federal Way has. They have it laid out and mapped out for us. We can see exactly where they're going to be building and where they're going to increase the amount of calls that we're going to go to. So your fire department really takes that seriously. We're doing really deep dives into all of this. And we're trying to figure out exactly what does this mean for us in the future? Can we continue to operate this way? We don't think we can. We're looking at different financing options. So we've actually created a whole new strategic bridge plan to help get us through the next couple of years to really identify, one, what's our strengths? What are some of our areas of opportunities? But then most importantly, how are we going to be funding ourselves so that we can continue to grow with the plans that are already in place for economic development? So right now, part of our strategic plan is funding, looking at that. We are going for a lid lift here on the August primary. But there's another option that we might be looking at too, which is a service benefit charge. But we just haven't made that determination yet. But we just want you to know that we're actually doing, a deep dive into that to make sure that we're going to be able to meet your needs. Accountability. Well, let's talk about accountability and leadership and internal communications. All of those together. Firefighting is more like a profession. It's a 30-year career. It's not just a job. People come and spend 25, 30, 35 years, if not more, fighting fires for the same fire department. What happened is we're experiencing a large turnover. A lot of those people were hired back in the 80s. And so now they're retired. And as they retire, we're getting a new influx of new, younger generations that are just a little bit different. And that's okay. but we have to be adaptable and flexible, and we have to be able to meet the needs of not just our community, but also our new and emerging fire department members, right? So we're reevaluating, what does accountability look like nowadays? What does it look like for them? What does leadership look like for them? They need different leadership than what we needed 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So we're always evaluating those things. And then internal communications, we know that technology is just exploding everywhere. And so are we keeping up to date on all of those new and emerging opportunities for communicating with our members and making sure that the fire department is stable and we can continue to operate no matter what happens? So this is just, I just wanted to give you this as like the final heads up of this is where we are and this is what we're doing. And soon we're going to be making a decision on what kind of funding mechanism we're going to go into. We'll be back out here to give more presentations and talk about that a little further in depth. So that concludes my presentation, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about the district.
Bravo. Good job. Yeah. Just a
There's no-
suggestion as you update this,
Yes.
since we do, 78% of our calls are EMS and traffic accidents, vehicle accidents are such a significant part. I would suggest having more information, a graphic on that. I know we use the jaws of life, et cetera.
So break out the EMS calls a little bit more.
And since it's, you did a really good job on the fire part, but since we do so much of our activity on non-fire related, it might be worth beefing that up with more examples related to, I don't think you even mentioned in your vehicle accidents, for example. I know that's a very significant part of EMS, is it not?
Yeah.
Particularly because of the freeway we have.
Yeah, very good point.
I would suggest when you next update, you might have to on that.
Will do.
Otherwise, it's great.
You also need a picture of the egg drop at Green Gables.
I should close it out with them chanting, drop, drop with the eggs. Yeah, that'd be good.
Scrambled egg. Wow.
Okay.
The thing is, a large number of people probably do not understand what the acronym EMS stands for.
Good call. Yeah.
And so by incorporating what Commissioner Berger was thinking, and identify that it's emergency medical service, then people will click and then follow up that takes time.
Yeah.
Did you
Good call.
mention that our firefighters are EMTs along with Eliza with Commissioner Thompson? Did you actually say that they're EMTs?
Yeah, I don't know if I actually said that verbatim.
People should know that they have
Yeah.
expertise, not just in fighting fires, they
Yeah.
have high level of expertise.
So when I built out that EMS slide, we
deliver babies.
Yeah, that's a good one. I have some photos of us after we delivered a baby, so we can throw that in there. It's a good one. It's after the family came back from the hospital.
Okay.
Yeah, it's appropriate. Perfect. I really do appreciate, the whole point of this was to get your feedback. So if you think of anything else afterwards, please feel free just to email me directly and we will make those changes. Because this presentation really is for you, for our community. So thank you.
I don't know how important it is to the citizens, but there's no mention of how we're governed. One question that always comes up, or people think that we're part of the city, like a city fire department.
Got it.
So there's no mention that we're an independent
district.
governmental entity,
That's a good point.
kind of thing.
Good point. Doesn't need to be a lot, just, but at the beginning, talk about how we're governed. And what the structure is. We're not a department of the city, we're a separate independent district with elected commissioners.
Perfect.
When I'm talking to people, I ask, do you know how the school board is run? Oh, yeah. I said, we're run the same way. We've got a board, et cetera, et cetera. So, we do the same things pretty much at the school district does, the school directors do.
Just a lot better. Just do it better.
Just that. Perfect. Governance, how it operates, EMS slide. Copy that.
Brad, I appreciate how you're thinking beyond the outside the box. When we were he was at the egg drop over Green Gables. I work over there as a paraeducator in the special eds. And he comes up and says, what about a program where the fire department learn how to handle autistic and kids in a fire situation. Why don't we go the other way and educate the autistic other things to give them an understanding of what the fire department does and what they can expect. That is just a brilliant idea, and I'm going to work with him and the head teacher for the special needs group at their Green Gables. We're going to try to come up with some ideas, and who knows where it'll go. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, sir.
Anything else on strategic bridge plan? Good, super. All right, agenda item 6. The board is going to adjourn into executive session for RCW 42.30.140 relative to collective bargaining. Joining the board in executive session will be Chief McCafferty, the negotiating team that is present at this meeting, Executive Secretary Lori Perry, and President Baston. We anticipate the executive session lasting for 30 minutes. Action may or may not be taken after the executive session. At this time, we will recess for 5 minutes to get everyone transferred into executive session. At the end of the executive session, we will take a 2-minute recess to get everyone transferred back over to the regular meeting. Right.